morning. Welcome to the Genuine Origin DR Congo webinar. We're very fortunate to have a couple of our team members joining us from overseas, and we're going to get to intros in just a moment. First things first, keep in mind that we are experiencing a little bit of it's the holidays. Shipping can take a day or two longer. Plan accordingly. Sign up for UPS, My Choice, all that jazz. And we have lots of exciting coffees coming in. The washed Sidamo just landed. We found a few more boxes of that pink bourbon, and it's gone already. We also will have a Yerg Natural coming in at the end of the month, and we're restocking a few things as well. So check out the Afloat page and the new arrivals page. Also, always check out the free shipping stuff. Save yourself a little bit of money. So on that note, as I said, hi, I'm Jen. I handle the West Coast for Genuine Origin and have been in the coffee industry here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon for over 20 years. And we're going to go around the room and do intros. So Cindy, you're up next.
Hey, everybody. My name is Cindy, and I am the Southern Sales Manager for Genuine Origin. I've been working in coffee for, 21 years now. And yeah, I'm based here in Houston, Texas.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Richard, you're up next.
Hi, well, good to be with everybody today. My name is Richard Hyde. I've been in coffee for more than 30 years and worked for most of the last 25 years with small farmer cooperatives in Latin America and Africa, particularly in Peru, lots of places in Africa. And I first went to Eastern Congo in 2008. So yeah, it's really good to be with you all.
Thank you so much. And Dirk.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dirk Sickmueller, and I will be in my 30th year now of coffee trade, most of which has been with the Volcafe Group, mainly in East Africa, and more recently this year in Switzerland, where I run not only our Congo supply chain activities, but also our specialty portfolio in Europe.
Very cool. Thank you both for taking time in your evening to join us. Also, if you've ever come by the Genuine Origin booth at Expo, you would know Dirk from his very smart vest made out of a coffee bag. So
indeed, I should be there.
Well, we'll just have to have you on again. So from here, Richard, you put together this beautiful presentation that we want to spend a few minutes to learn a little bit more. So if you want to get going on that, I will click the buttons.
Very much indeed, Jen. Yeah, so quickly, I thought it'd be great to start off by just a few pictures to give you a flavour of the place, of the people, where this coffee is coming from. But really the main emphasis and point of this is for you to ask your questions and us to have a discussion. So I'll keep it brief, but just to give you a flavour here. In fact, you can see Dirk and I up a volcano, which is also in Varunga National Park. It's called Nyiragongo, and not on the slopes of this particular volcano, but one just neighbouring across the way. The picture on the right are the mountain gorillas, which of course the Varunga National Park is really famous for. Just give a quick plug for Varunga on Netflix, extraordinary documentary. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend that. Will give you more of a sense of the history of the place. Yeah, and so Dirk and I had the privilege, goodness, it was just over a year ago, to go up this volcano and spend the night on the edge and take those shots looking down on this extraordinary lava lake. And at the top of the Varunga is a picture of the Ruwenzori Mountains, taken from where our coffee project is based and where Dirk and I were also staying. Jen, next one, please. Thank you. So these are just some of the people. one thing I think the most one of the most striking things that I would say is that you know, the place is extraordinary in terms of topography, in terms of climate, soils, growing conditions, absolutely extraordinary. And it's really in the last sort of 5 to 8 years in North Kivu that people have really started taking their coffee more seriously, looking at what's happened in other parts of the region, particularly in Rwanda and Burundi and some other countries, and realizing that rather than being a low-value commodity, which would just filter across the across the neighboring countries into Uganda and Rwanda and so on, they could take that coffee. And here you can see it was a pretty basic technology, but really taking great care to take the ripe cherries, to pick them, to float them, pulp them, and then lay them on the drying tables. And we'll come back to some of that in due course. Again, Jen, please. So this is what we're talking about today is a project which is where the Varunga National Park, which is the oldest, actually the oldest national park in Africa, founded in 1925. And they have a project really designed to address some of the livelihood issues and environmental issues of the area around the park, where 4 million people live and work and farm. So this coffee project is working with 2 cooperatives, and we'll come to where they are in just a sec, on the fringes of the park. And it's actually funded by the European Union, and the organisation I work for, Farm Africa, which is a London-based value chain and technical support NGO, is put this project together. And as you can see on the Vol Cafe Select very much as a core market partner to take the coffees logistically and take them into the market, as Dirk will be telling you. Next one, please. So where are we? Here is East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and you can see Rwanda and Burundi, and the Great Lakes, the African Rift Valley, going up along the middle there, from Lake Tanganyika in the south to up through Lake Kivu, Lake Edward, and going upwards, and so the coffee, coffee is these are all well-known and renowned coffee growing areas, and the area to the left then is Congo, country the size of Western Europe, so extraordinarily big, large area. And the coffee area is everywhere, from right down the south on the shores of Lake Tanganyika, up across the borders of Burundi and Rwanda, up to the borders of so North Kivu, and then up to Ituri, and the area to the and all that area actually has this extraordinary growing conditions. Next one, please, Jen. And the Varunga National Park sits then in North Kivu, and if we come back to Lake Kivu, right down the south, and Lake Edward, and there's a 400-kilometer stretch, and all that area is national park. So there are the volcanoes in the south, there are in towards the north and the east, there are the Ruwenzori Mountains, and then there's the mountains around on the shores of Lake Edward. And it's in that northern section which where the coffee and that we're talking about is grown. Next one, please, Jen. So we have 2 cooperatives. The first is called Cooperatives, and Lake Edward. You will see southeast in this picture, bottom right. And those are all small washing stations, 15 small washing stations that Cooperatives have. And Butembo in the middle is where the coffee is processed. So very geographically spread out. The reason to have lots and lots of washing stations is because the Congo logistics are really sparse. Roads are really problematic. So you take cherry, you want to take it very close by, freshly pulp and process it, and then take the dry parchment through to Butembo, where it's milled and exported. Jen, next one, please. So this is the other cooperative, Kawakanzaruru. You've got the coffee that is actually there at the moment and coming through again, just right in the middle of the main harvest right now. And this is the Ruwenzori Mountains again. To the bottom, you've got Lake Edward, and you've got then, in fact, no fewer than 24 of these what they call micro washing stations, very small coffee washing stations, on the slopes of the Ruwenzoris. Jen, next, please. And then one of the things that is really most exciting about, I mean, the place is extraordinarily beautiful, but there's a dynamism, despite all the terrible things that happen, on a, the serious challenges of daily life. The spirit of the people is quite extraordinary. Their determination is something that, really, I hope that many of you one day may experience yourselves. And one of the things is that women, and there's two women at the top, Vumilia to the right, who's responsible for all the quality control of the mill, and then Zawadi to the left, who again, and she's the leader of the women's department of Kopade cooperative, and there's just a determination to take their coffee and to to transform their lives. So the people are really what makes this whole thing really exciting. Next, please, Jen. So this is coming to the project and the work we've been doing. This is all last year. A lot of work on infrastructure, drying equipment. You've got Dirk down at the bottom inspecting the trees and the vegetation. He can tell you more exactly what he's up to. And then to the right, again, we visited a coffee roastery in February this year, actually, African Coffee Roasters. And starting to actually taste the coffees, which is something that for most people in that region is completely new. There was just no capacity, no facilities to taste their own coffee. We've just built a cupping lab at each of these cooperatives now, and training is going to start very soon to train the cuppers, men and women, who will then lead not just the quality control effort, but really build the in-depth understanding of what makes great coffee. Next, please, Jen. There is, it's inescapable, a tragic and just awful side to life in Eastern Congo, as many of you will be aware of the ranges, and the Varunga National Park itself is actually under active and continual attack. And that means that some of the rangers who are most extraordinarily dedicated people are killed in action. And there you have Emmanuel de Morode, the park on the left, the park director, earlier this year I think it was in May, when 12 Varunga National Park rangers were ambushed and killed. Insecurity and the challenges of building stability are enormous. In fact, in the Kawakanzaruru area, there was some attacks this weekend, which just means life is really all the more uncertain. But not just there's not just insecurity on the right-hand side. There's also problems of climate, which is common to many places, of course, we well know, with increasingly variable and volatile climate. This is one of those small washing stations which was completely destroyed earlier this year by a torrential rains and a mudslide. So there's all these challenges that people are facing, but yeah, and that's just part of the picture. Next one, please, Jen. Very quickly, and we can come back to this, no partnership in coffee is complete without a whole lot of people doing a whole lot of different aspects and really linking together effectively. So we've got Kopade Cooperative and Kawakanzaruru Cooperative. Obviously, that's where the farmers are all gathered together, more than 5,000 farming families. Virunga National Park, as I've said, Farm Africa. Root Capital, who I'm sure many of you have heard of, provide the finance, which is critical to finance the crop. EcoCert certify the coffee organically, and all the coffee is certified now, which has been again part of what we've done in the project. Vol Cafe Select clearly the partner of Genuine Origin, and Dirk and that are there, and then yourselves. I mean, roasters and retailers. We cannot do this, and we cannot take forward the dreams and the potential for this coffee, without everybody committing, staying with it, and being part of it. Jen, next one, please. And this is just a couple of pictures from the last 2 or 3 weeks. Very quickly, at the top there, we're putting in some more serious sort of infrastructure in terms of coffee washing station capacity. There's the fermentation tanks you can see they're actually being built, and we're doing them one at a time. This is the first sort of more medium scale washing station that we're setting up, and if that all goes well, we'll roll out that program further on. You've got then the coffee right now drying on the drying tables, and in the middle, coffee is still ripening, and that's one of the things which is it used to be that there were very regular coffee seasons, and you could say right now is the main harvest, which in this part of the world is sort of July, August through to December, and there's a fly crop in sort of April, May. And now they're saying actually coffee is ripening more and more all year round, and so we've got to adapt and keep that up. And of course that gives opportunities, but it's something we've got to follow up with. And Jen, next please. This is just the final one, which to me really just sums up the whole spirit of the place. This was on a visit to Kirandera washing station, and those are the Zawadi and colleagues. Just that sense of dynamism and excitement about the potential, and there's a link there for the Varunga National Park. Really go on their website. They've got some some good stuff. They talk about what they're doing in the community, and as well as, of course, of the extraordinary wildlife that they're very much actively involved in preserving and maintaining for the future. So I promised Jen it would be 5 minutes. That's probably been close to 10. Jen said everybody runs over.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's true, but I didn't have to get out my big hook, so you're okay. One other little bit of business before we get into the rest of our discussion is, don't forget there will be a couple of polls coming up, and we also have that Q&A function at the bottom. So we will try and work those in as we go, or hold them for the end. If we have too many questions, you can always reach out to us directly, and we're happy to get more info for you. Cindy, myself, and Jay, who's our East Coast sales manager, our contact info is right on the website, so you can always get in touch directly if there's something else you want to know more about and we don't have time. So that being said, man, now I just have more questions. So I think, I saw your question asking about how these coffees compared to other East African coffees, and we'll get into that a little bit later for sure. But you both, Richard and Dirk, you both have such a long history in coffee, and specifically in East Africa. What prompted your interest in getting into Congo?
Dirk, I've been talking a lot. Why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, it was, I would say, really a chance meeting with Richard about 1.5 years ago. I probably at the SCA event, or even before that, a couple of months before that, the one in Boston. And the Congo has always been a very fascinating black book. Never knew what was going on there, even though I was living in the region in Kenya and Tanzania for so many years. It was really, I would say, curiosity that made me immediately confirm my interest to Richard to get involved with this project and with the marketing of the coffees. Because we heard a lot about the Congo, of course, about the struggles of Ebola, of rebel activity, of some sort of civil war going on there. Never really knew any more about that, nor how it was affecting commerce and trade and lives of ordinary farmers throughout the country. So it was really a great, good luck, I would say, to suddenly have the opportunity. And really, before then, I had never really even tasted Congo coffee. So you know, it was that also opened up the taste buds and the eyes to new possibilities, that there really are other great coffees in East Africa beyond Kenya, which was my home. It still is my home. So yeah, so that was really, it's with me. It's a new thing.
And if I just jump in, it actually goes right back to the beginning of my whole coffee journey. Back in the, dare I say it, the late 1980s, I joined as a fresh-faced trainee, a company called Schluter's in London, long-standing family company, been going for more than 160 years, I think, in East Africa. And they joined me, and I joined, and it was because I wanted to. I wanted to go and live and work in Africa, and one of the places where I knew they worked was Eastern Zaire, as it then was. But they were 3 or 4 of us joined, and they didn't send me to Eastern Zaire, Eastern Congo. They sent me to Douala in Cameroon, which wasn't the same thing at all. I thought great, fantastic things about Cameroon, but it wasn't the same. And and then I came back. Actually, I didn't get based there. I simply came back and became a coffee trader based at the desk in London, and imported coffee, particularly for the UK market. And we, from the Schluter East Zaire, Eastern Congo office, we used to get occasional parcels of coffee, and it was really the good, the bad, and the ugly. And probably the bad and the ugly were more frequent than good. But when we used to get a parcel of 100 bags or something of the good coffee, it was extraordinary. And that really made, oh my goodness me. And talking about Kenya, I used to send it to coffee roasters who would blend it with the Kenyas, and it was used in all sorts of ways. But then coffee, which was grown initially by under the colonial rule by the Belgians, mostly in the States, all the infrastructure really broken down. It had pretty much broken down already by the early 90s. And really, then the coffee, it's not surprising that Dirk hadn't seen it, because the coffee wasn't. It simply disappeared from the market. And so ever since then, I had this nagging thing, like, what happened to the Eastern Congo coffee, and can I ever get back there? So my work took me to Tanzania and to Uganda and northern Malawi, and all sorts of other exciting places, and Burundi in East Africa. All the time I was thinking, there's still farmers over the other side of the lake there, over the other side of the border. And eventually I found somebody say, yeah, there are. And so when I finally went there in 2008, it felt like everything was coming full circle, and I was blown away. I mean, I was blown away, I'll stop on this, but I was blown away, first of all, because things were awful then. This was in South Kivu. Life had pretty much come to an end. So, in terms of stop, economically, the rebel activity and so on, nothing was going on. But I just looked around and I said, this is incredible coffee growing country. People were still growing the coffee, even if it was being smuggled across Lake Kivu at great cost, to sell for next to nothing, to trade for barter for salt and basic goods. I thought, well, the answer, or part of the answer, is right here. And so that's where, from my point of view, that's where it all began. We're working with a very small organization, a very small cooperative. We've been working for 2 or 3 years to try and get started again. They've seen what happened in Rwanda, and can we get a piece of the action? So we took out the first, I think it was in 2008 was the first 7 tons of coffee, and then we managed to get people really excited. We eventually got some funding to really get things going again, to refurbish and then rebuild a new washing station, and then work on the agronomy, and and so on. And the story has continued, and lots of other people clearly have very much involved. And so Congo is very much back on the map, and here we are today.
Awesome. Cindy, I think you had a question, right?
Yeah, definitely. Such an interesting story about all of this. Would love to know more about, we know that Varunga National Park has really invested in the farmers, and could you tell us a little bit more like how that came about and what that looks like?
So yes, I mean, Virunga National Park have a very much a strategy. They're looking at the long term. There's an under existential threat. There are so many reasons why the gorillas and the park could be things could come to an end. But one of the things that they under the really inspirational leadership of Emmanuel de Moreau, who's been the park director for several years now, really had this vision. Say, if we're going to if the park is going to be there, it is the biggest. It's one of the biggest actors in this region of North Kivu. There are 4 million people living within a day's walk of the park, and if and unless issues of livelihoods and sustainability for the people aren't addressed, then the Virunga National Park will never be in an environment where it can really concentrate on what it's doing and thrive. And so one of the first things they come up with, which and it, on very large scale, is if it does resources, looking at hydroelectricity. And they've actually put an incredible hundreds of millions of dollars into developing hydroelectricity, which then can generate not only electricity for people, housing and so on, but schools, but also then on the basis of that energy, then you can get to business and industry and start manufacturing and processing things and so on. So that was one of the big cornerstones, and then. And then following on with that is looking at agriculture. So looking at cocoa, and there's palm oil, and there's shea, not shea, but
chia seeds.
Yeah, that's chia seeds. Thank you, Dirk. All of which are grown and can be grown more effectively. And so this project really comes as part of that, and Farm Africa is involved because Farm Africa are experts on agricultural value chains and developing those value chains, and so that's and so that's where I'm based for this work, and so that's where the rationale has all come about. But I think one of the most important things is that while the Virunga National Park is there to support and finance and accompany the process, they didn't set up these cooperatives. Those cooperatives are there. It's an initiative to which is already there to take things forward. And so it's really alongside people and supporting them to build their own businesses collectively. So Cindy, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I can also add, sorry, Jen, I can also add that the combination of Virunga National Park together with the cooperatives make for actually a very compelling conservation and community story. We have a lot of how do we say community-based game parks, ranches, conservancies throughout East Africa in a much more organized and a much more safe environment. And really, I see this as the Congo equivalent to what we see in other African and certainly other countries worldwide, where the community starts becoming real stakeholder in its future. Yeah. And
I want to get more into that, Dirk, because our coffees are called Varunga Park Blend and Gorilla Blend. Sorry if you missed out on the Gorilla Blend, but we do still have Varunga Park Blend. I remember from when you talked to Rob, and then I did a cupping on Instagram, that there are some specifics around conservation with these coffees. Can y'all get into that a little bit more about what that looks like for the wildlife and flora and fauna?
yeah, Richard?
Absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, these farmers are really up against up against the park borders, particularly there was one area where there are lowland gorillas, and then on the Rwenzori Mountains. So there are a number of different aspects to this. One is that the level of deprivation and poverty is really high, and people live in very, very difficult circumstances. And so one of the really important things is that with very limited ways of making a living and feeding their families, there is pressure to go into the park itself, because the park is rich in wood, and obviously there are the animals and so on. And so one of the, if you like, direct impacts is if people have the capacity to produce high quality coffee and to be able to take it to a market and get a decent price for it and build that stability, then the pressure to sort of go into the park. I mean, one of the things which is a big phenomenon is the production of charcoal. Now, charcoal is what people use to cook on, right across Africa, and it's very much in demand. Well, of course, charcoal comes from wood, from deforestation, and so the impact. So there's this sort of direct connections. Then I would say there's also the sense of the national park as people, as Dirk said, people having sort of ownership of it. People are really, the people in the area speak very proudly of the gorillas and of the park itself. But by taking through the project, and also by taking the whole image of the park and the work of the park, and using that to market and add value and convey the message of the coffees, then that also means that the national park is working actively to support livelihoods, and they're getting benefit from being next to the park, rather than simply being deprived of opportunity to go and take the resources out. And then I mean, the third thing, which I also alluded to earlier, is that I mean, national parks are under pressure all over the world, of course, but nowhere on earth that I'm aware of is a national park in a place where there is ongoing active unrest, rebel activity, and so it's crucial for conservation to happen, that the whole area, the whole region is stabilized with and becomes peaceful, and a place where people can make a living. So I think those would be my the main things I would highlight.
Mm. Yeah, and also I would add, I think we made some calculations on the back of an envelope while we were there. The park director estimates that the illicit earnings out of the national park numbers comes up to $500 million worth of products, mainly charcoal, of course bushmeat, elephant tusks, all the other animal products which can be smuggled out, and that's a huge amount of resource that the park management now really want to make available to the people in legitimate ways, by providing the hydroelectric power and creating joint enterprises with local businessmen to produce soap, or cocoa bar, a bean to bar cocoa chocolate factory, or chia seed factories. And of course, the coffee program is one of many of those social enterprises, really. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, and there's our first poll. Click accordingly. Cindy, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Clearly, lots of challenges in DRC, not only with unrest, terrain. Would want to know a little bit more, what other big hurdles do you guys have to jump over while working there, if there's anything else that stands out? And then my second part to the question has to do with access to dry mills. We heard you say there's a lot of, building a lot of wet mills around the area, but what does the dry mill access look for and exporting?
I would just jump in quickly and say that one of the challenges is very practical about logistics, and that's really where one of the areas where Dirk and team come in straight away on logistics and the heavy lifting actually to get the coffee physically out of the country. 1,000 kilometers across 2 land borders, not helped at all by COVID-19 and all that disruption that's caused, and that's a very real constraint because we know coffee needs to come out fresh, come out safely, and get to you guys as quickly as possible. So that's just one thing that's I think is a major challenge. And Dirk?
Yeah, I would very much agree with that. It can be as simple as there not being any roads because of heavy rains, bridges washed away, and of course 2 borders which this year have been really badly affected by truck jams and general congestion caused by corona precautions, I would say, in the region. So the 1,000, did we say 600 kilometers from this part of Africa down to Mombasa can take anywhere between 20 and 30 days, and not all say communication is smooth and easy, but I think we've settled on a couple of very reliable transport companies that have the necessary infrastructure in place to enable us to track the whereabouts of the trucks very reliably. And but it's also an expensive process. So not only transport of the actual coffee, but also getting samples out of the country takes a very long time. And we're just now in the process of testing a new route of sample sending via Uganda, using our sister company Chagalani there, and it's still being tested, but certainly companies like DHL operate in the Congo, but it's a very, very slow and arduous process because they have to send samples through Kinshasa, the capital, and just getting from eastern Congo to Kinshasa is also very difficult. There are not very regular communications between the two. So those are some of the challenges. you asked about infrastructure in terms of dry mills.
Dry mills, yeah.
Well, I was truly amazed. There's some very nice warehouses and dry mills in Butembo, in Beni, which will be as good as any in Central and South America, and with relatively new and very well maintained equipment. So I was quite surprised to see the Rolls-Royce Bühler mill equipment. I mean, it's not Rolls-Royce, it's the Bühler mill equipment, but they are the Rolls-Royce equivalent in the middle of the DRC Congo, and very high quality machinery in the dry mills. So
yeah, just adding on that one, is that actually the region used to produce 10 times as much coffee as it does today. And so a lot of that equipment, of course, it's high quality equipment from the 1980s will continue working for if it's well made for a long time. So I just looked at a few statistics. So back in about 1990, when I first saw this the Kivu coffees coming out, they were producing 60,000 tons a year of Arabica coffee, which is about 130 million pounds. By 2010, it was just down to 3,000 tons a year, or about 30, and so the whole industry has completely taken a nosedive. But I'm happy to say that as of now, we're much closer to about 6,000 tons or 13 million pounds of Arabica being legitimately exported. A lot of coffee still goes across through informal routes, through smuggling, but the direction of travel is very firmly upwards right now.
Yeah, I would say that smuggling is another challenge, because that certainly does distort the orderly flow of cherry to the wet mills. Farmers are always under pressure to sell, usually ahead of the crop, in order to get a small amount of cash, and then they have the obligation to basically settle their debt in cherry deliveries, usually at very poor prices, of course. But Uganda is a very active cash-based market, coffee market. Rwanda, Burundi are becoming also more liquid in that sense, and coffee will always move across borders to not only the highest price. It doesn't even have to be the highest price, but certainly to where the liquidity is, where the cash is. Yeah.
So because of that that huge decrease in production and just the work that you're seeing and that you're participating in, are there plans to expand this work within Congo, or to move into other regions of Congo to help with farmer support and production there?
At this point, we're still quite early in the process for Varunga National Park, and these things take time to build. Mm-hmm. So I think that we first really want to get these value chains really working well. There is some potential to greatly increase, if we get everything lined up and organized. There is 2 cooperatives, we could see double, treble volumes of coffee coming through. So first, we want to really get that, I think that goes well before looking at other areas around the national park. That said, there is coffee coming from South Kivu, which is not where the park is. And that's where, in a sense, the specialties of coffee new wave really started around Lake Kivu, and so there are up and down Eastern Congo there is more coffee coming out. Just wanted to add very quickly on, just coming back to the question of dry mills. as and when capacity did become an issue, and particularly then one of the linkages which we're thinking about at the right moment is of course with the Varunga National Park's hydroelectricity. That would be as a source of power to be able to potentially for the cooperatives to eventually own and operate their own dry mills, but that's at the point at which that becomes something that's volumes and so on become make sense economically. But that is a potential tie-up.
And I think Richard, if I'm not wrong, sort of the next step, the big step this year, and the plan for this year, which was somewhat possibly hampered by COVID, was to push ahead very much with the agronomy program as well. And we can intrinsically, with the same tree population, we could easily triple the production just by a very simple agronomy program focused on pruning or stumping and regeneration of trees. Because the tree population is there, it just needs to be properly managed. Yeah,
absolutely right, Dirk, and indeed within the program, that is something that we are working on actively as of right now, and starting from particularly from January onwards. We started really looking at the questions of quality. Because if you haven't got quality, then you can produce more, you get nowhere. So really the first emphasis was get the quality, get the infrastructure and the sort of the whole chain working, so you can get the coffee out, get it known, and then start to sort of build some demand for the coffee. And then when farmers see, oh, coffee is worth, it is worth something, this is starting to work, then they have the motivation then to come in behind it and say, right, now work on your good agricultural practices, work on productivity, work on farm management, the economics of farm management, and all the things which are then takes the next stage of sustainability. So absolutely, that's this agronomy is the next thing which we are getting into right now.
And sorry to shift gears on us here. But the question that is on everybody's mind, how has COVID impacted your operations? You guys touched a little bit here and there on it, but overall speaking, how has this really affected you guys out there?
Richard?
I'll jump in. I mean, in some ways, COVID is, it affects everybody everywhere, doesn't it? I mean, in so many ways. I mean, the first, just on the Varunga National Park, and if you go on the website, you'll see the first, and just before we come into the coffee, which I'll come back to, but of course, it's devastated tourism, completely just shut down tourism. So that was the big thing, getting people to see the gorillas, to see the chimpanzees, to visit the volcano, the plans to open up the eternal snows up on those on Mount Stanley and the Ruwenzori Mountains. There's so much potential for ecotourism there. And that was really happening, and now that's just being cut off. So that is one immediate effect. I'll let Dirk talk about the challenges again of logistics, because that's affected things hugely. In terms of, I mean, in terms of COVID in the community and sort of operationally, it's very difficult to know. As in other parts of Africa, there isn't testing, there isn't the sense of tracing and all the things that we, are now sadly all too familiar with. And so there is COVID, and they've taken lots of precautions. And for a long time, you couldn't travel between the different cities. You couldn't travel between Kinshasa and Goma, and you couldn't travel between the cities, and that was a big constraint. And so they sort of closed down people's movements. They've introduced masks, they've introduced, this sort of social distancing, and so yeah, that has had the effects. But in terms of illness and death rate, I'm not really aware of any great statistics. I think in some ways, It seems that parts of East Central Africa have been less dramatically immediately affected by people getting ill and dying, possibly because people live more outdoors, possibly to do with climate, all sorts of really things about COVID that none of us understand and nobody knows really.
And if I can contribute there, you know, a year ago, when we were on the ground, we were in the middle of a Ebola outbreak. So this part of Congo has suffered from a decade, I would say, of Ebola, epidemics coming on and off. And everywhere we went, there were hand washing stations where you wash your hand with chlorinated, highly concentrated chlorinated water. So interestingly enough, I would say they were probably already more sensitized than the rest of the world in this basic hygiene already, because of the Ebola outbreaks that they've had. So I think with their daily life, it was a very almost business as usual. The other thing, of course, is that the African communities are a very tactile, if that's the right word, community. They love to touch and hug and slap hands, and you know, I think that would have really affected the general livelihood, having to, you know, bump elbows or so on. It would be a very new custom to get used to, and a very strange one. So I think, you know, just in everyday life, I can see those situations. Yeah.
So thank you. I'm going to jump in because we only have a few minutes left and we still have to talk about coffee. Oh. So as a reminder, yes, we do still have Varunga Park Blend on the site. And if you've watched these webinars, you've heard me say it before, and I will continue to say it. The best way to support these kinds of programs is to buy these coffees. That's how Vol Cafe Way works. That's how these coffees work. And if you've missed any of the webinars, like Chugalani came up, our operation in Uganda, those are all on our YouTube channel, and I highly recommend you go back and check them out. But Dirk, I remember listening to your conversation with Rob about these coffees, and then I did my Instagram cupping, and someone asked, how are these coffees? I've never had these coffees. And I think you saying they're comparable to Kenya's was really accurate. I thought that the one thing I noticed was that while there's a little bit of that savory side in the Varunga Park, it's not as condensed Campbell's tomato soup in your face. But Cindy, if you want to weigh in with any of your impressions on those coffees, and Richard and Dirk, let's just have a little chat.
I was blown away by the DR Congo coffees that we got. Lots of good feedback from my customers, but yeah. I had never had the experience with coffees from there before, and let's just say I'm super excited for 2021. The Varunga Park Blend that we still have in stock, it does have this nice sort of savoriness to it that kind of balances out with the sweetness, and it's also a great alternative, you know, for some of those that maybe can't afford the high ticket price of a Kenya. You can still have this really awesome diverse coffee.
I think I in fact was talking to a trader at Vol Cafe Specialty Coffee this morning about those coffees, because they're also such an accessible price. Dirk, Richard, what are your impressions, and what should we be looking for in the 2021 coffees?
Dirk.
Richard.
I think they're extraordinary because they have that that balance of sweetness, the edge of acidity, a nice body, and yeah, I mean, right now, that's what you got in those coffees. I would just, if I look ahead to maybe a couple of years time, then I think that, you know, as we get the cupping lab more up and running, as we're starting to take lots from individual sites, some of these, some of those washing stations up at 2,000 meters, and those coffees, they absolutely will, blow you away. And at the moment, often they're not produced in big enough quantities, and we haven't got everything developed enough to sort of say, okay, here's 10 bags of this or 20 bags of that. But I think that actually it's all opening up. There are microclimates. As I say, there's the altitude, and it shows in the coffees also. They're traditional Bourbon varieties. So there's been the lack of investment, so it has a good side. I mean. Yeah. To get organic certification was not difficult because nobody's ever used chemicals in living memory, and so so you actually and volcanic soils, you've got to, there's definitely more you can do with the soil fertility to actively manage it back into and manage the trees. But altogether, I think that we're starting to a really good point, and from here, we will discover more things going forward, and it'd just be great to have. This is where roasters really come in. We've seen that in other parts of the world where people, don't just buy from this area, but hey, from this washing station. And I think that not for this year, or probably not for next year, but we will get there, and we'll look at honey, and we'll look at naturals and all sorts of things. But right now, there we are.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Dirk.
I would like just to add to that we're last season, during the harvest season, it was actually a very wet year. There was a lot of rainfall. The growers generally found it quite difficult to dry the coffees properly down to the requisite 10-11%. And this year, we've had actually a much more stable climate there. We've had a lot of sunshine, much less rain during this crucial drying period. So I would expect the coffees this season actually to be better prepared, processed, dried than the previous year. And certainly the on-ground training that Farm Africa has been undertaking should be testament to that as well. So the cherry selection at the driver, I have never seen such good cherry pick quality as in the Congo last October when we were there. And that really blew me away because everyone talks about wonderful Kenya coffees, but if you go to a Kenyan cooperative, you will see overripes, greens, all being thrown in with the into the #1 quality, and also I must say on the estates in Kenya where it should be perfect, it's usually a very slack quality control process, just because cost of picking and cost of labor is so much more expensive now in Kenya than it was.
Sure.
But in the Congo, they really do pick only the red ripe cherries, and they deliver that to the washing station, and they're very, very disciplined. So that to me was really amazing. And we must also say something about the women's group that is not only farming the coffees, delivering the coffees, but also managing the wet mills. We have 2 particular wet mills in one of the cooperatives that is that we're promoting, and they're producing now increasing quantities of coffee as well, excellent coffee. So we also have that gender program within the whole project.
That was on my list to ask about, and I have more questions to follow up with via email. But we are out of time for today. I can't thank you all enough, both our viewers and our panelists, for taking the time